It starts with a question that policymakers in Tehran have been asking with growing urgency. How can Iran turn decades of political goodwill with Africa into concrete economic and strategic partnerships that reshape both regions, from major trade summits in Tehran to transport deals in Tunis? The 14th administration is moving fast. The historical foundation. Over the past 2 years, Iran's engagement with Africa has accelerated in ways that suggest a deliberate, coordinated strategy. Senior officials speak openly about moving beyond symbolic ties to build a real economic, industrial, and political partnership. The details reveal a plan focused on trade, transport, resources, and influence that stretches across the continent. Iran's relationship with Africa did not begin yesterday. Since the 1990s, Tehran has seen Africa as an emerging market and a potential ally in global forums, especially during times when sanctions and isolation limited its ties with Western economies. While the political rhetoric was often strong, trade volumes rarely match the enthusiasm. This imbalance between political and economic ties is something Iranian officials themselves acknowledge, admitting that economic engagement lagged behind. Despite sanctions and Western pressure, Iran never abandoned Africa. Instead, it leaned on shared political, cultural, and historical values, positioning itself as a partner to African nations navigating similar struggles against outside dominance. This long-standing narrative remains central today, but what has changed under Iran's 14th administration is the scale and ambition of the projects being pursued. Africa's untapped potential. For Tehran, Africa is more than just another trade destination. The continent holds more than 1/4 of the world's arable land, vast reserves of minerals, and a young, rapidly growing population. In 2024, 11 African countries ranked among the world's 20 fastest growing economies, a fact repeatedly cited by Iranian officials as proof of Africa's promise. Large consumer markets, untapped natural wealth, and a hunger for infrastructure make Africa attractive to investors across the globe. Iran sees itself as uniquely positioned to provide goods, technology, and industrial know-how at competitive prices. The key is ensuring that these partnerships move from paper agreements to real exchanges. The third Iran-Africa Cooperation Summit. The clearest expression of this strategy came in April 2025 when Tehran hosted the third Iran-Africa Cooperation Summit. Representatives from 51 African countries attended the gathering at the Islamic Summit Hall, alongside senior Iranian figures including President Masoud Pezeshkian, Vice President Mohammad Reza Aref, and Minister of Industry, Mining, and Trade Mohammad Atabak. President Pezeshkian opened the summit by highlighting Africa's potential and stressing Iran's readiness to share its achievements in technology, industry, and development. He described cooperation with Africa not as optional, but as a strategic necessity for Iran's 14th administration. Mohammad Reza Aref echoed this in his meetings with African delegations, calling Africa one of the key emerging centers of global development. He urged follow-through on agreements from earlier summits, noting that while past events produced valuable commitments, too few had been implemented. For attendees, the summit was more than ceremonial. Iranian industries, from petrochemicals to tourism, showcased their capabilities to African buyers. In return, African representatives introduced investment opportunities and consumer markets to Iranian producers. The gathering was designed to serve as a turning point, institutionalizing cooperation and embedding Africa more deeply into Iran's strategic plans. Mohammad Atabak's trade vision. At the summit, Minister Mohammad Atabak laid out an ambitious economic roadmap. Iran's trade with Africa currently stands at about $800 million, accounting for only 3% of Iran's exports and 1% of imports. Atabak's goal is to raise this figure to $10 billion annually. The plan to achieve this includes building industrial parks and refineries, expanding renewable energy projects, establishing overseas farming ventures, and creating direct transport links through new shipping lines and air routes. Financial bottlenecks are also on the agenda, with proposals to facilitate banking exchanges and set up a foreign exchange settlement mechanism. To support these moves, Atabak announced €2 billion in financing through the National Development Fund's buyer-seller credit mechanism. He also outlined institutional growth, including expanding the number of joint chambers of commerce from 13 to 20, increasing the number of commercial attachés to 12, and creating a joint Iran-Africa Development Fund aimed at attracting $2 billion in investment with 75% insurance coverage for commercial risks. Industrial cooperation through IDRO. Another critical voice was Farshad Mokimi, head of the Industrial Development and Renovation Organization of Iran. Founded 58 years ago, IDRO has been central to Iran's modernization efforts. Mokimi emphasized that Iran is ready to partner with African nations in infrastructure, transportation, maritime industries, advanced technologies, and human resource development. He argued that Iranian expertise can reduce investment costs and time for African projects, stressing that Tehran does not see the relationship as a one-way street. Instead, the focus is on mutual growth through shared industrial capacity. For African leaders, such offers of practical, affordable cooperation resonate strongly given their infrastructure needs. Strengthening transport and trade channels. Transport remains a recurring challenge. Mohammad Ali Degandanavi, head of the Trade Promotion Organization of Iran, addressed this directly. He explained that shipping lines to Africa are limited and costly, which prevents trade volumes from expanding. To fix this, Iran plans to establish direct maritime links and expand air routes. Degandanavi also highlighted the role of commercial centers already established in some African countries. These centers act as hubs for Iranian and African traders, providing visibility for products and a base for negotiations. Plans are underway to expand these centers further. Delegations play a complementary role by hosting African trade missions in Iran and sending Iranian delegations abroad. New opportunities are created. To back these efforts, Tehran has allocated a $2 billion credit line dedicated to purchasing goods from Africa, reinforcing the message that Iran is not just looking to export, but to import African products as well. Petrochemical industry targets Africa. Iran's petrochemical sector is one of the strongest parts of its economy, and officials believe Africa could become a major market. Hassan Abbassadeh, head of the National Petrochemical Company, told summit delegates that Iran currently produces around 100 million tons of petrochemicals annually. With 67 new projects underway, production is expected to rise to 131 million tons. By 2029, Iran already operates 73 petrochemical complexes and 3 power and utility plants, with major hubs in Asaluya and Mashhar. Abbassadeh explained that Iran can both supply feedstock to Africa and help build petrochemical capacity on the continent, offering African nations a chance to develop their own value-added industries. Tunisia as a gateway. Beyond the summit in Tehran, Iran is also pursuing bilateral deals. On September 9, 2025, Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi visited Tunis and signed a package of agreements with Tunisia. These included visa-free travel for 15 days, the launch of direct Tehran-Tunis flights, the creation of a joint economic commission, and new initiatives to encourage tourism. Tunisia's location makes it particularly attractive to Tehran as a gateway into North Africa and beyond. But analysts caution that many past memoranda of understanding between Iran and African partners have remained on paper. Persistent challenges such as high transport costs, limited limited. Shipping options, financial transfer difficulties, and regional competition continue to constrain trade. Structural barriers to overcome. Ruhollah Latifi, spokesperson for the Trade Development Commission of Iran's Chamber of Commerce, noted that Iranian exports to Tunisia rose significantly in the first 5 months of the year, though Iran's overall share of Tunisian imports remains negligible. He stressed that sustainable growth will require reliable transport, affordable logistics, new financial mechanisms like barter systems, and active promotion of Iranian products through exhibitions and trade fairs. Available data shows the potential. Iran's iron and steel exports to Tunisia have generated about $7.5 million in recent years. However, agricultural goods such as pistachios and raisins still reach African buyers indirectly through hubs like Dubai, often rebranded under third country origins. Without direct logistical and financial channels, Iran cannot fully capture the benefits of its trade with Africa. Iran's expanding footprint. While the economic agenda dominates headlines, Iran's activities in Africa extend further. In May 2025, reports highlighted Tehran's broader strategy, noting that Iran hosted 700 business people from 38 African countries during the summit. Foreign Minister Araghchi also led celebrations for Africa Unity Day in Tehran, and Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei underscored Africa's importance in a series of statements. According to analyst Danny Citrinowicz, Iran's push in Africa aligns with a larger geopolitical trend, exploiting the retreat of Western powers, especially France and the United States, whose influence on the continent has waned. This vacuum creates opportunities for countries like Iran, Russia, and China to expand their roles. Areas of strategic engagement. Iran's activities span multiple regions. In the Horn of Africa, Tehran works alongside the Houthis. In North Africa, it leans on close ties with Algeria and navigates Libya's unstable landscape, which has implications for Morocco. In West Africa, it cultivates relations with Shiite communities. In the Sahel, it seeks to expand influence through security cooperation. Stronger ties with South Africa, Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Kenya, and Ethiopia illustrate how wide Iran's reach has become. During Ethiopia's civil war, Iran even sold UAV systems, strengthening its military ties. Such deals reflect a pattern, combining economic engagement with security and political cooperation to secure long-term influence. Raisi's 2023 Africa tour. The groundwork for much of this was laid earlier. In 2023, then-President Ebrahim Raisi visited Kenya, Uganda, and Zimbabwe. His trip produced 13 agreements, including uranium exploration in Zimbabwe, $500 million worth of agricultural projects in Uganda, and a telecommunications infrastructure initiative in Kenya. The Iran-Africa Trade Summit in 2024 followed this momentum, prioritizing mining ventures and technological cooperation. Tehran offered to share drone surveillance technology for mineral exploration in exchange for concessions in cobalt and lithium from Zimbabwe and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Pharmaceutical exports were also emphasized, with companies like Daru, Paksh securing contracts to supply antiretroviral drugs to Uganda and Mozambique. Security and military cooperation. Iran's military ties in Africa have expanded notably. In 2024, Tehran supplied Babel 2 and Mohajer 6 drones to Burkina Faso and Mali, which were used against jihadist groups. Reports also suggest that Niger's post-coup government considered giving Iran access to uranium ore in exchange for economic aid, drones, and missile systems. In Sudan, Iran reportedly supplied loitering munitions to the Rapid Support Forces, while also providing arms to government-aligned forces, effectively playing both sides. This reflects Tehran's broader strategy of using military exports to embed itself in local conflicts, gaining leverage over both states and non-state actors. Economic and ideological outreach. Economic partnerships serve as a foundation, but Iran also invests heavily in ideological and cultural. Outreach state-funded cultural centers in Dakar and Abuja promote Shia Islam, while the Al-Mustafa International University in Qom trains hundreds of African seminarians who later return to their home countries. Annual Ashura processions in Senegal attract tens of thousands, reflecting Iran's growing religious influence. Media outreach has also grown. In 2023, Iran launched Hausa TV, targeting some 60 million Hausa speakers across Nigeria and Niger with programming focused on pro-Palestinian themes. Scholarships for African students, particularly in medicine, further deepen these soft power ties. Why Africa matters to Iran. 5 main drivers explain Iran's pivot. First, Africa's financial systems provide pathways to evade sanctions. Second, access to resources like uranium, lithium, and cobalt supports Iran's military, industrial needs. Third, alliances with anti-Western governments in Africa help Tehran build solidarity against Western pressure. Fourth, Africa provides a lower-risk theater for projecting influence beyond the Middle East. Fifth, soft power initiatives expand Iran's ideological reach. Together, these factors make Africa a strategic priority, not just an economic experiment. Challenges and competition. Iran's Africa strategy is not without obstacles. Some African leaders remain skeptical about Tehran's to deliver on large-scale projects, especially given Iran's own economic challenges under sanctions. Attendance at the 2024 summit was lower than expected, a sign of this skepticism. Competition from other powers also complicates matters. Turkey and China are deeply entrenched in African markets, often offering larger investments and more consistent delivery. Iran's strength lies in providing affordable arms, ideological solidarity, and flexible trade arrangements, but its economic capacity remains limited compared to bigger players. The way forward. Despite these hurdles, Iran's determination is clear. The 14th administration has institutionalized Africa as a strategic priority, whether through multilateral summits in Tehran, bilateral accords in Tunis, or military and cultural initiatives across the continent. Iran is embedding itself more deeply into Africa's political and economic fabric. For Africa, the attraction lies in alternatives. Iranian expertise in infrastructure, agriculture, petrochemicals, and defense can be appealing, especially when paired with credit lines and promises of risk insurance. The success of this partnership will depend less on rhetoric and more on Iran's to deliver tangible results. From industrial parks and shipping lines to drones and cultural centers, Iran's outreach to Africa is multi-layered and ambitious. The 14th administration under Masoud Pezeshkian has elevated this relationship into a strategic priority, one that is reshaping how Tehran projects power globally. The question now is whether Iran can sustain the momentum, overcome structural barriers, and truly turn Africa into one of its most important partners. What do you think about Iran's growing footprint on the African continent? Could this shift change the balance of power in global trade and politics? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.